Richard Howell, saxophonist, multi-instrumentalist, vocalist as well. Also, first instrument being bass. Producer, educator. And Richard, the first time that I think that we had met briefly before. Sometimes, when you know people for so long, you don't really remember the first time you met them. But the first time I really became aware of who you were as a musician was at the club, the Black Cat, not the one that's around now, but the one that was at like Kearny and Broadway.
Oh, were you there?
I was there, and it was.
Were we playing? I'm sorry,
I was. Yeah, I was in the audience. Yeah, I was
Okay.
in the audience, and I think I'd played a gig somewhere else in the area and dropped by afterwards to check it out, and or maybe I had some other folks that were playing in that group, and so that's how I ended up there. And it was, it was the late 90s. It was kind of the height of the 90s .com, as we called it in those days. It was a very much kind of a gentrified audience. And you were on stage, and the band was sounded great. But then you kind of changed the mood quite a bit, and you went into your blues song that's about when I was a little boy, I used to want to be a cowboy. Of course, I don't remember the lyrics exactly.
I used to want to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
That was a tune written by Babatunde Lee, actually.
No kidding.
And I sang it on my album. I sang it on my album. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I always thought you wrote that.
No, he penned it.
Oh, great.
It's his political statement. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very cool. And so it was this amazing moment when there were kind of all these folks kind of dressed up nicely, drinking martinis, and you went into that song. And I thought it was really masterful how you were able to kind of turn this kind of bacchanalious night out in the town into something that had a little more meaning. And so then after that, after every time I would run into you, I always thought of that moment, because you really, it was really a very commanding performance, and I just loved the lyrics. I loved the song so much. So that was kind of my introduction to who you were in the broader sense, other than being just a saxophone player,
Well, thank you, Ravi. Yeah, that was me being a rascal.
Yes.
Yeah. I probably have maybe a slight contempt for that crowd. Maybe I did. I don't know.
That's kind of what I sensed. Yeah, that's kind of what I was picking up on. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, if I can get them out of their comfort zone, it makes me feel kind of good. That's kind of how I can be sometimes when I'm with an audience. It's like, you engage them.
Yeah, and it was kind of a combination between shocking and gracious, both at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah. So why don't you introduce the gentleman sitting next to you? Tell the folks who this is.
This is an amazing gentleman who's become one of my dear friends. Actually, he is the creator of La Fauna Music. He is one of the staff engineers here at Hyde Street Studios, and he's been working with me for the last 4 years. We've been doing all kinds of different projects. Sometimes he does engineer, sometimes he does co-production. So he's just an amazing and a talented and a sweet and wonderful human being. His name is David Sines.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And a drummer as well.
Drummer and a guitarist and composer. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting how so many of the great recording engineers are drummers. I find that's always really interesting.
Yeah. Sometimes that works.
Yeah. And I remember when I worked with you in the studio, David, you got a really, really great ride cymbal tone, which is, I remember that because I'm a bass player. That's kind of like the other half of the bass sound is what the drummer's doing on the ride cymbal. Right. So I really valued that.
Yeah. Well, I learned that from Richard and he will tell me, make sure we put like a microphone underneath and on top. you know, and we have to like make sure there's no phase issues, but we always get that right because that's what, you know, drives the entire thing. So
yeah,
I
and it
put a
sounds very
microphone
natural.
underneath and one up top, and
That's
then we
so
got
cool.
that right.
That's coming from I'm going to feel bad because I can't remember his name, but there was a video back in the 90s called How to Do a Modern Recording. And it was, you may know who it is. He was the engineer who did the drum sound for John Bonham.
Oh, wow.
And he had a whole bunch of different techniques on how to, to mic drums. And I was doing a section on microphones, and I spoke about, the condenser mics and so forth, and the patterns and so forth. And I was walking around playing saxophone. This video is still out, and a lot of schools still use this video. It's called The Ventures in Modern Recording. And I just can't, Eddie something. He also produced Jimi Hendrix a couple of times. So I just kept my ear to the ground and listened to him, how he did John Bonham and all these other, great drummers of the rock and roll era. And I always liked the way these guys had the sound of the drums. And I thought, putting it in the music that we play, jazz music, it just, it enhances and enriches.
Yeah. I believe Mitch Mitchell passed today. Yeah. Speaking of which.
Is that Led Zeppelin?
Jimi Hendrix's drummer.
Jimi Hendrix, from the Experience, right? Right.
Yeah. So Richard, did you always live in Los Angeles as a child, or did you move?
I grew up in Southern California, in a suburban city called Pomona, California. It's west of San Bernardino and east of Los Angeles. And it's interesting time out there in the late 60s and 70s. My parents moved from Los Angeles. They actually moved from Watts, California, to the city of Pomona. And we were like the first Black family in that neighborhood. And I got to witness as a young person white flight and how that happened. And people started to get out and leave, and the whole community changed. So now in Pomona, all kinds of things changed. The trash service didn't come, but came every week. It started to come bi-weekly or bi-monthly.
Oh my goodness.
Police started to come into the community like daily. Had the helicopters coming through. I don't know if anybody's seen this movie called Boys in the Hood.
Yeah. Same
kind of vibe. Just helicopters, just constantly 24 hours.
Yeah.
So it kind of shaped, who I am as a human being as well as a musician. And in Pomona, my father was extremely into listening to Count Basie and Duke Ellington, and he played his stereo extremely loud. And I thought it was the coolest thing to have your stereo being played loud all day long. And who my father was, he was kind of active in, let's just say, civil rights. And not too many people messed with him. When our neighborhood became somewhat of the suburban ghetto, most people's houses were getting robbed. Mine wasn't. There was a fear of my father. He just didn't he didn't play around. So what I always enjoyed is that he could play his music loud, and which gave us permission to do the same thing. So the music was blasting, like late night sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just like Basie. And then after that, we heard more Basie.
Wow.
So there was a point where I got tired of listening to Count Basie. In fact, there's a story. I thought, I used to consider Basie some of that old people's music until I saw Count Basie live, and I cried. I swear I did. I cried. I thought, man, I get it, because he swung so hard.
Yeah.
But suburban, we called it the suburban ghetto, and actually it was named Sintown. So any folks from Sintown are online right now. Welcome.
Yeah. And your father was a saxophonist as well.
He was a saxophonist. He played baritone saxophone, which was actually my first instrument. But when he got married, back in those days when you marry and if you're not going to be a musician full time, you don't play. He just had his instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I picked up his instrument and I learned to play it. In fact, when I got to junior high school, I actually decided I was going to be a baritone saxophonist. So that was my first instrument. And he kept the music around, and he kept he kept it playing. And we had instruments in the house. So that's kind of what his thing was. We had a piano, we had drum sets, there was a bass, there was always instruments there.
That takes a lot of real estate. I mean, to have a drum set in a residential home. I mean, if you're not a drummer, so that's quite a commitment.
Yeah. We had it in one of the bedrooms.
Wow.
We just had, we called it the music room, or my grandmother's room. We called it grandma's room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And so you played a little of all of these just kind of for entertainment, I suppose.
Well, I was the guy that was on the instruments all the time, and I was told that, pick one. Pick an instrument, man, because you're trying to play everything, and that's what I did. I'd get up in the morning, and on a Saturday morning, I'm playing drums to 2 o'clock. And it was like, I thought you was a saxophone player. So there was a little bit of envy in my house with my siblings, dude, because everything I picked up, I wanted to play, and I wanted to learn it, not just have it. I wanted to learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's see, did you play, what was the school outlet for you when you were a teenager? Like, was there a big band that you were involved in, or did you play like in kind of R&B bands outside of school? What was your outlet at that age?
Well, in junior high school, I learned in junior high school, I played in, the concert band. Mm-hmm. And then I went to high school, I played in the marching band, did all of that stuff. When I went to University of Cal Poly Pomona, there was a brother named Kofi, James Benson was his name. Kofi he went by Kofi. And he started the African studies there, and he started a band outside of the school. So I never really joined the school band. I joined his band called Gal Dow, which was Welcome Black Brothers and Sisters, and that was kind of that Afrocentric outside band that I became a part of. And we actually toured as young students. We would go to some of the clubs and bring our own food in the clubs and do stuff like that. We saw Les McCann. We saw, Eric Gale would come down and play with us. Freddie Hubbard played with us a couple of times. So he was, Ronnie Laws came and played. He was from Texas, and he always had access to all the musicians. So he would have ringers in the band. He'd have us up playing, and we thinking we're doing something. We weren't doing anything, but everybody was holding us up. So
just to kind of get a better handle on the style, would you say it's kind of like in line with John Coltrane's Africa Brass, or was it more out than that? Was it more like Art Ensemble Chicago, or?
No, we were doing Crusaders tunes.
Okay.
Roberta Flack was, we had a couple of singers. We're doing some Roberta Flack, some kind of, every once in a while we would just play out. We would, we'd lay a groove and we'd play out.
Okay.
And I did learn a lot from this brother. He was, we would play gigs, and we show up on the gig, and whoever didn't show up, we would just wait. We would never wait for him. If the hit started at 6 o'clock, we start playing at 6 o'clock, whoever was there. Yeah. And I always dug that. It's like, I'm here, and there's another saxophone player, and the drummer wasn't there, the bass player wasn't there. And he says, hey man, it's 6 o'clock. We made a contract. We stay in our integrity. We play.
It's always stressful when you're late to a gig, but I can imagine it's even more stressful when you're late to a gig and the band started without you.
Yeah. Well, but that lesson for me is that, I can show up to a gig, and if it started at 6 o'clock and they want us to play, I can, I don't mind playing by myself. I don't have a fear playing by myself.
Right. Wow. So then at that same time, you were also focusing on visual arts. And so how did you balance those two, or what was it about visual arts that made you want to delve deeper into that discipline?
Well, I was an illustrator, every day I got up and I just drew pictures, you know, starting with, you know, as a young kid, you do the comic book thing. I did the comic book and then, you know, migrated to automobiles and then, you know, bodies and then still lifes and stuff like that. And so I went to a school called, it was Sig Lane's art school. I went to his school. And when I completed that whole course, I took the diploma and stuck it up on the bathroom and went on the road. Because I was interested in music. Music was my whole thing. But I thought it'd be wise that I do that because my father was actually pushing me to be an architect because he said there are not that many Black architects. And I'm like, I'm not interested in it. You know, I don't care how many there aren't, but there are not. But I prefer to just, you know, play the music.
Right.
Yeah. And so then when you started going out and performing and making a name for yourself, and I know you've also shared some stories with me in the past about sitting in with some of the studio band, the players that were doing the Los Angeles studio bands at the time. And so how did you kind of start really kind of, you know, creating a buzz about who you were in Los Angeles?
Well, it was kind of difficult to say who you are, to prove who you are in Los Angeles, because there's probably, you know, if there's one of me, there's probably 100 cats trying to do the same thing. But I was very fortunate. I played in this thing called the Hollywatts band. And that's where all it was like an all Black session band where all the Black players would come together and we play all the tunes that we wanted to play. And it was kind of like what Oaktown is doing right now. There was the young and you know, the young musicians. Well, this was a mixture of different generations. So some of the hottest session players would be there, like Chuck Finley and all these other cats would be there, Ram Lee and Michael Harris and all these cool cats would come in and play, and they would have the younger cats with them. Charles Meeks, I remember, was the bassist, and Patrice Rushen would come through, and Dougal would come through.
Wow.
And you know, we were just very fortunate to be able to play there. This was the Hollywatts band. And then from there, I had a dear friend that played guitar, and he was a good friend of Don Myrick's, and he introduced me to Don Myrick. And I became Don Myrick's only student. In fact, I came up to Don and asked him if he would teach him, and he looked at me and he said, "Man, why don't you teach me?" I thought that was very cool. He said, "No, man." He said, "Because, you know, if you teach me and I teach you, then we're exchanging. Yeah. So you tell me what you know, I'll tell you what I know." And he was just a good, decent person. So that was one of my biggest mentors was Don Myrick. If anybody knows who he is, he's the saxophonist with the Phoenix Horns, who was the soloist on Reasons and Earth, Wind & Fire. He's the guy from One More Night and with Phil Collins. For those youngsters who don't know who he is, but you've all heard him, whether you know it or not. Yeah, so that was one of my biggest influences. Although I can't play the way he does, he was totally into Cannonball. And if you guys go back and listen to it, you'll hear those Cannonball influences. I just be trying to play just like that, but it doesn't come out. Sounds like me every single time.
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on that solo and Reasons. I've got it going through my head. Hasn't that become just like something that's people like, I don't know. It's just people like know every note of that solo.
Yeah.
You know, which is, it's really distinct. Yeah. And that's that live recording, right? Isn't that the live recording, quintessential live recording? Yeah. And then so from there, did he also not only mentor you as a player, but also in terms of a producer, or did you get into production? Was that another pathway?
Production was another pathway. There was this gentleman, I called him an elder gentleman. His name was Juggy Murray Jones. He owned Sue Records, and Sue Records actually brought Jimi Hendrix Ike and Tina Turner, and a few other people. And he was one of the older brothers that, you know, smoked a cigar, drove the Continental car, clean all the time, pressed jeans, you know, that kind of style. And he'd come by and say, Richie, come on, man. I'm gonna show you how to make a record. And so, you know, I jump out the house and to jump in his car. And he's like, "No, man, use your car." that kind of vibe, you know. No, man, follow me, because so I'd follow him to the recording studio, and he'd say, "Sit down, man. I'm gonna show you how to make a record." And then he'd start, producing these acts, and I would be listening, and he would, kind of give me some tips and some pointers and stuff like that. And if I would try to say something, I would hear something. He'd go, "Shh, hold it, man. Just listen." Just listen. So that was kind of my tutelage. Somebody like that was like, "Hey, man, this is how you make a record. Shut up and listen."
Yeah.
So, it got me interested in learning how to be an engineer. I actually did go to school to learn an engineer, but I don't, I let masters like David do it. But, I know my way around it,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important to be able to communicate with an engineer, even if you don't have the real nuts and bolts down, that you're able to at least kind of talk to them, about what you're looking for.
Well, that's important, and that's where I became, Robbie. I became a communicator.
Mm-hmm.
I started working with younger bands and coaching them and vocalists and all the headaches that you have, being a producer and trying to get people to sing together and play together, and I was very fortunate to be around some really great producers, and learn some of those skills. There was this young lady named Cheyenne Fowler who passed, but she would hang out with folks like Gene Harris from Black Jazz Records, and she had a subsidiary record called Shady Brook, and I became one of the staff producers. So she would always have all these different projects where, back in the day, you would put records together or demos together, high quality demos for record companies, because now they don't have the development anymore, but you would have demos that were really high quality. And I was very fortunate because being the staff producer, I got to hire who I wanted to hire. I mean, I hired like Greg Filligans and Alex Acuna, some really, hip cats, and to come in and play this music, play, my charts. There were times where, we didn't have the budget, and that's kind of how I learned to pick up a bass. I started playing bass,
Mm-hmm.
And then, and being comfortable doing multi-tracking, I started playing drums because I had all this stuff in the house. So there was an opportunity for me to utilize all these things that I learned growing up. So I'd play a little keyboards, and then I'd find a better pianist to come and just fill everything else. But sometimes I would just lay the pads.
Sure.
And then grab someone to, do the soloing and the comping and the hip stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And then how did you get called for the tour with Chaka Khan that you did? Was this like around the same time, or was this, am I jumping quite ahead?
Well, you jump a little bit. I did 4 years with Etta James for a while before that, and that just happened. Someone just called me.
I thought that you started playing with Etta James after you moved to the Bay Area.
I did. Well, okay, Chaka. I met Chaka when I was in Los Angeles, and I didn't really play in her band. I actually got to sit in a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Later, when I moved to the Bay Area, I got to play with her, the band that actually Lenny and Stanley Clark and
Echoes of an Era.
No, Echoes of an Era. I did the Echoes of an Era tour. I did Chaka's Echo of an Era tour, playing Joe Henderson's parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But back in the day with Rufus, when she was with Rufus, I got to sit in because one of my dear friends was from Chicago, and we used to hang out. I would go and hang out with Chaka, and I got to sit in like, once or twice a month with them. So that was always cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing when you hear those albums produced by Quincy Jones. It's got the Midas touch of Quincy Jones, of course, but then, when I go back and I'm going through YouTube and I see a performance by Rufus, it's amazing because it sounds just like the album.
Yeah.
It's got all the bells and whistles of the album, but it's just, like 6 musicians. It's amazing.
Yeah. Then there's the Rufus, this guy, the pianist was this guy named Hawk, who's with this group called Shadows of Night. It was another rock band. I'd be hip to that.
Mm.
He's the pianist in that group. Yeah.
And so what made you start to think about moving out of Los Angeles? I mean, to be in the entertainment capital of the world, and to be making all these connections, and what was it about the Bay Area that made you feel like
Well, it's
relocating here?
interesting. Los Angeles is hard for a brother. I just got to tell you like it is.
Yeah.
I got pulled over probably every week,
Mm-hmm.
just every week, just for nothing, just being hassled. And at some point, one gets tired of that. One gets extremely, extremely tired of that. And we can figure there has to be another place for you to live.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking coming from a gig, somebody's playing, coming from a gig and you're getting pulled over, going to a gig and you're getting pulled over. And I was around the time when Patty Hearst was going about,
Yeah.
during that time, and they were just checking folks to see who was in their car. And
Yeah.
most black men, were always being hassled, and count me in, man. They hassled me to the point where I said, you know what, it's time for me to get out of
Was
here.
this a Los Angeles Police Department, or was this is
You name
Pomona
it, from
under?
from Pomona, La Puente, from the whole Western
Mm-hmm.
Empire.
Chip.
You just get pulled over.
Yeah.
And I've been pulled over. I've been on a road for 3 months and come home and decide not to drive, but to walk. And I'm walking down the street and I get pulled over. So once you get pulled over and get hassled, after a while, you think there must be a better place to live. Now, then you're being hassled. Today, everybody's getting shot. But I was getting hassled so much to the point that it was just, it was time to go.
Mm-hmm.
It was as simple as that. It was time to go.
Yeah.
And my friends were being hassled as well, but I
Yeah.
had latitude. I could leave.
And that must have been a unique kind of pain to go out on the road, to when you're out on the road, you're being perceived as this this entertainer that's bringing joy to people, and you're going into hotels and you're going into restaurants and kind of living the life to some degree, and then you come home and that's the treatment you get right off as soon as you step outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was disheartening.
Yeah.
Disheartening. But I kind of keep an upbeat vibe, man. I just figured there's always a solution some kind of way. So I kind of live that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's an inconvenience. There's something else I can do.
Yeah. And so you must have kind of visited San Francisco to kind of see what was here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what was here at that time?
Well,
and also, Richard, just let me ask if everyone could please mute themselves until they speak, or you can jump on in, but until then, just please hit the mute button. Thank you.
I came up to I came up to San Francisco with some of my friends who grew up in the Bay Area, and I just dug it. I just thought it was so cool, and I actually saw the police drive by, and I got, kind of freaked out a bit, and they just kind of looked at us. So I thought, okay, that's cool. That's all right. I mean, I understand that there was some turmoil here. I really do. But it just felt comfortable. And, I found some gigs here in the Bay Area. And then when I came up, I saw cats playing in the street, and I thought that was cool, because I just wanted to play music. So I came up, eventually when I made that call, I was actually producing some records in Los Angeles at the time, and I was actually using the Phoenix horns, and I was thinking about staying there. But something said, it's time for me to go. And when I came up, I started driving back and forth to Los Angeles for a long period of time. And then I decided that I was going to stay up here. And I started what they call busking in Europe, but I just called it playing in the streets. So I started doing that. And I did that differently. I brought myself this beautiful tuxedo from the 40s. And I went out on the street and I played soprano at the time, and there wasn't any soprano players on the street. And I played like I was playing like I was playing at Carnegie Hall or you know, the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah.
You know, outside.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I've always had this idea that I am a musician and I will play anywhere. And I played with the same type of conviction and the same type of tenacity, you know. So that's what that was, and it worked well for me. And eventually, you know, I started working with Etta again, and Shaka Khan, and a few other people, Maurice White, and a whole bunch of folks, you know. So that's just like had that never give up spirit of just playing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think back on that era, because that's right around when I started to perform in San Francisco, and it was such a different San Francisco then. It was the audiences were so much more into creative music in those days. I felt like there were a lot more artists just simply living in the city of San Francisco. And so that's changed quite a bit. So I think that it had that kind of bohemian quality that it's lost a lot of back in those days. Yeah. So what, Richard, do you want to play some for us?
You want to hear some music, or you want to hear something from the new album? What do you want to do?
Either way. What do you want to? I see you got your saxophone there.
Yeah, I have saxophones here. Let me preface some of this. Yeah, I've been known as a tenor saxophone player, and I actually started, as I said, on baritone saxophone. But the last year, 2019. I started picking up alto, and in earlier this year, I actually got another saxophone, alto saxophone. And one of the things that I learned from Don Myrick was his sound. His sound was the biggest thing that he always pushed. In fact, he always said, you know, I work because of my sound, not because of all the notes that I play. You know, people like the way I sound. And that's just one of the things, you know, me being the teacher, I'm going to talk to you young students. You got to work on your sound. Because, you know, it's the very simple aspect of this. If you don't sound good, people don't want to hear you. So think about that. I am going to try to play this alto. I haven't completely been satisfied with the sound that I get from it, but I'm daring and I love to play it. So that's kind of, I'll play something. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to kind of figure out something here. If you guys will indulge me, I'll just play something, and then I would like to get to the album.
Great.
Something like that.
Beautiful. Bravo, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Pops.
Yeah. So I'm just going to keep learning and trying to practice on this thing here and then work on my sound. So
That's
thank
great.
Thank you for indulging me.
You know, what is it? Is it, you call that, what is the silver? What is it about a saxophone that makes it silver? Is the lacquer, or is it the metal, or?
It's, what do they call it? It's the, come on, saxophone players, help me out here. It's the,
plating. The plating.
the plating. It's called the plating.
Plating.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
plating. Thank you. Thank you. This is the Cannonball. I actually endorse the Cannonball saxophones. So I have a set of these.
I love the way they sound. The silver plating really gives them a very pleasant brightness.
Yeah, this is black. I prefer something a little more mellow. So I'm out. As I said, I'll be working on that one. So you know, I'm actually the tenor player, but as I said, as of late, I've been rediscovering the alto, and I'm gonna keep playing it, and you know, and see what happens. You know, so until somebody tells me to get off the stage with it, I'm gonna continue. Yeah.
So I want to play some music from your new album, but first I'd like to ask you about how, because when you perform and as a musician that's played in your group, you bring in so many influences from all over the world, and you've traveled all over the world. And so I'd like to just talk to you about that. I know you do quite a bit of teaching in Europe. You've represented the United States of America for the State Department. You've also traveled to Mali and studied the music there and performed there. And so you know, some jazz musicians do have this kind of boxed in approach to playing jazz and what it is to be a jazz musician and what jazz is and what it's not. And when I play with you, I feel like you're bringing in, it's like all one happy family. And so how, in your travels, what have you brought into your music from your travels?
Well, one of the things that I do is that I listen, and I listen a lot. And that's one of the things that I'm actually trying to impart to the students, is to take the time to listen. In my travels, I feel so fortunate that I got to sit down with, you know, people like Hussein Kili, these Moroccan, you know, musicians who would sit there and drink some tea with you and pour the thing from way up here and hit it right there on the ground. It's like, it's, you know, and they're talking about their music. You know, the Berbers are talking about Berber music, and, you know, and then, you know, I've had some opportunities to be, you know, in Mexico and playing, you know, Mexican music and understanding the influence of the Africans that had on the Mexican music. I think it's just about paying attention, and I kind of want to bring all that kind of stuff in my music. When I was growing up, my father, besides Basie, I have to get back to him, he also listened to African tribal music. You know, back in the day, they would have like National Geographic or these societies that go into the bush and take their Nagras and, you know, tape some ceremonies and stuff like that. Well, my father had stuff like that, you know, and he was listening to this, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we'd listen to it over and over, like, man, that's cool. That is so cool. So, you know, I kind of got that. I kind of bring that to the music.
That's interesting, but how was your father able to seek that out? I mean, that was it through those organizations? Like
through those, yeah, through that kind of stuff.
Pretty esoteric.
Mail order type stuff.
Wow.
You know, maybe museum gift stores or something.
Yeah.
And stuff, but Yeah, he was totally into it. Totally into it.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. Well, that's quite an enrichment.
Yeah, and I do recall imparting that to that young man that's in one of those boxes over there.
Mm-hmm. Your son, LA. Yeah.
Yeah.
LA.
I mean, I just do, I just like, here, dude, listen to this. Here, dude, listen to that.
Yeah.
Here, dude, listen to this. From Yusa Ndur to Salif Keita, middle name is Salif, from Salif Keita to Mamadi Keita to all of these cats. Because to me, that's the foundation, that, that African music, those African rhythms, that's the foundation. And so that's kind of what I bring. And then I bring, my suburban ghetto roots and the funk and the hip, well, we called it funk, soul music, and I try to incorporate that in everything that I do. I especially put it in the jazz music, yeah, I do. I bring the neighborhood. I try to phrase like Ernie Isley.
Yeah.
In bebop, trying to play some bebop, but I hear Ernie Isley, or Ronald Isley. That's my roots.
Yeah.
I bring it all. I try to bring it all.
And what about like from other disciplines, like say your visual arts background, or you've also done a lot of collaborations with dancers, and you've written music for dancers, winning the Isadora Duncan Award for your project with Gregory Dawson. So how do you see the kind of cross pollination between disciplines?
I don't know how to answer that question, Robbie. I just, people hear me and ask me to be a part of their projects. And that's how that particular project came in. And I've done that 5 times. I did my last album. I did the opening with classical ballet. I don't know if I try to merge that. It just seems to fit for me. And it's something that I really love doing, is, writing my music and watching dancers and amazing choreographers choreograph to the music that I create.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate enough to participate in one of those performances with you, and it's just such an interesting way to communicate with people, because the dancers are thinking in steps, and the musicians are thinking in measures and beats, and they say 5, 6, 7, 8. We say 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just really easy to get confused after that.
Yeah, it's true. That's a different kind of thinking.
So tell us about the CD.
Moon Over Tiburon.
Album, so to speak. Yeah, it's not a CD anymore, but it's an album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moon Over Tiburon is it's, I don't want to get esoteric, but I saw the moon sitting on top of the water in Tiburon, and it inspired me to create some music. And the music that I play, I call it bridge music, which is, to me, it's always a pathway to bringing people together. So it's always, anything that I'm doing is kind of has that community spirit, unification type of vibe, because that is who I am, and that's what I'm about. So the new album, I think maybe we should just play some of it and let it speak. There's
great. Which track would you like to play?
I don't know. Hey, young man over there in the other box, what would you like to hear?
Moon Over Tiburon.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay, well, I like the title track. This features Mr. Frederick Harris on piano, Frederick Harris, David Frazier on percussion, myself on saxophone, L.A. Howell on drums, and the young Jasim Perales on trombone. Did I miss anybody?
Don't think so. He sends his regards, by the way. He's unable to be here at the moment. But
if anybody knows who Jasim, he's Professor Deep Cuts from he's this amazing young trombonist that I saw in LA's band, actually. LA had a group, and LA pulled my coat and said, "Hey man, check this dude out." And I appreciate him doing that, and we've all become family. He's a sweetheart, and he's an amazing young musician. I think he was 17 or 18 when he got a full scholarship to what is it, Manhattan or Juilliard?
Juilliard.
Full scholarship to Juilliard. He's a talent, and anyway, he's on this entire tune, and as we recorded it right here at Hyde Street, and yeah, David was.
And another thing that I'd like to let everybody know is that this was all recorded during the shelter in place, which I think is really it's really great that you saw that this was a good time to really put your best foot forward, because so much of what we're all doing these days are not what we're necessarily doing, but so much of what entertainment is just about content and kind of like a lot of cell phone videos and that kind of thing. So I'm really pleased to have this new release that you really applied yourself to.
Well, I have a confession. I have some of those too. Some of those videos, self-made videos.
Okay.
All
well,
right,
we'll have those on the next interview. I think we're ready. Rafa, you want to roll it? Okay, sorry for cutting that short, but
No,
I
no.
do want to make some time for some, open it up to some questions. Very beautiful playing, very beautiful composition, and it's
Thank you.
just, yeah, bravo.
That was wonderful.
And it's a very unique mood that you capture there, Richard. Very beautiful.
Thank you. I want to credit those musicians who, I had an opportunity to be in the room with. It's always nice to be in a group of, where people that you really care about and care about you. So that's kind of what that was. I found what I like about that piece, if I may, is just I like the unique comping that Frederick was doing. When I wrote this chart, I didn't hear all of that. And this space that he kept placing in this silence that I thought, man, that just pulls you in. It keeps pulling you in, just like dropping this chord and just getting out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, that's beautiful. That's just so, to me, it touched me so to hear that type of sensitivity to the music.
Yeah, Frederick Harris really he has this ability to take your songs and interpret them in a way that's true to your intent, but also expands them. Yeah. It's really beautiful to see that, and with so much care.
And then the excellent mixing that David put into this, and then there's yeah.
It was all you, man. You were next to me all day doing that. I learned so much from Richard. Every day I'm learning so much about mixing and production and techniques, microphone techniques and life, everything. Every day. Because when we are here in the room, it's not just, we work, but we also we became friends and we talk about everything. It's great. I learned to listen with him a lot because I was not never knew about jazz when I'm more like a rocker. And then I think that we connect because you remember he said he likes the rock drums.
Right.
And then that's why I think we connect a lot in the music and the mixing, because he likes really powerful drums that usually in jazz music you don't work like that. And
well, it depends on the drummer. There's some dynamic drummers that be knocking you out when you're trying to, I've been very fortunate to play with, dynamic drummers.
Yeah.
Meaning that, man, I don't have any place to play. I mean, they're like everywhere. I've had that good fortune, and to tour like that too, like every night. It's like, man, there's no holes anywhere. But
I'd like to ask David, with working with Richard on, is this the third project you've done with him?
Fourth or
fifth.
So many
4 or 5, or maybe 7 or 8.
I mean, are you albums
It must be nice. It must be nice to come to a real solid understanding of what we're going for with the music, but then also so that it opens up the conversation to new areas of kind of understanding, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've done some live albums together.
Like 3 live albums.
Live albums.
And 3 studio albums.
I just recently, for anybody who knows, I just baked some 2-inch tapes, and I did this solo project, a duo project. Me and this Cuban pianist named Omar Sosa. So I just finished that. I'm just trying to make use of not sitting at home and brooding.
How many years that tape had?
That one was 50, maybe 20 years. But I'm going to show some age here. I was back here in the Hyde Street vault, and the guy went in the back and saw a 2-inch there, was 30 years old, and it had Richard Howell's name on it. I said, "Oh man, I've been here that long."
Wow.
Wow.
In the vault.
It was in the vault, and it was a rock project that I had done here.
That was now that were you performing or were you producing?
I was producing this band, this rock group here.
That's cool.
And I was actually playing bass on it because I can go boom 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 boom,
Uh-huh.
boom, 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 boom. And I don't have to go boom I just go boom, 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 boom. You know, that's another story.
Yeah.
You know.
That sounds good. So let's open it up to some questions for people.
The first answer is that I didn't do it. Wasn't me.
Any questions?
Great.
we can keep
Yes.
chatting if we want.
Yeah.
I have a question. Thank you for your presentation, Richard.
My pleasure.
One of the things you mentioned was the importance of developing your sound. And so my question is, as a multi-saxophonist, do you have a concept of sound for each of the individual saxophones, or do you have a unified concept in your head that you try to apply to all the different saxophones?
Actually, it depends on how much time I spend on the horn. It's not a universal concept. When I was playing soprano, when I was playing in the street, I played soprano in the street for a number of years, and all that traffic and all the outside noise, it made my sound bigger because I had to be heard over top of it. So I noticed when I played soprano, it sounded different than when I played on tenor. So like the tenor saxophone didn't have the same richness or bigness. It sound rich, but the soprano's like boom. Every time I picked up the soprano, it was like really, really big because of just, it's like exercising a muscle, trying to play over traffic. So I had a distinct sound as a soprano saxophonist different than the tenor. So yeah, we have youngsters here, or what do we have? I want to share something that my friend Don Myrick, as he said, he talked about his sound. He said, always talk about developing his sound. How his sound was developed was do I name names? I don't know if I name names. One of his saxophone teachers was in the Sun Ra band, and I won't say who it was, but dude had a habit, and he would tell him to go stand in the corner and do long tones. While he was doing long tones, he was over here nodding. Cat was nodding, and he was doing long tones, and he just kept doing it. He said, and he would not get up and says, keep doing it, man. And he would, that would be his lesson, doing long tones, standing in the corner and while his teacher was nodding. So that actually developed his sound. That's how he got this great big sound, because the cat was nodding and he was in the corner. So, I'm just saying your sound is important. Develop that sound. It's vital.
Okay, next question. Yeah, is that, yeah.
Richard, this is Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, man, thank you for being here.
Oh, man, I got to support the tribe, bro.
Thank you, sir.
I was texting Elaine, I enjoyed the texture of what I just heard, the sound. What are some of the approaches that you use on this album as far as production and engineering that got that sound? Did you depend upon largely the room, or were there some specific techniques you used? Because it had like a almost Rudy Van Gelder kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, there's certain mic placement, mic techniques, and the choice. There's a lot of good Neumanns in here, and then David knows how to use the preamps on there's a Neve console sitting over here, an old vintage Neve console sitting here.
Yeah.
What is this, like 50?
30 1073s, the most beautiful preamps that you can find.
And it's hot rodded.
Musical.
It's happening. So that's one of the reasons why I go. I like playing at the SSLs, but this is like home. So, and they take good care of it. They take really good care of it. But
you see that room right here in the back? That's why we put the drums in this room. It's really tight, very tight room actually, and we really close mic all the instruments. And in LA, he's a special, he uses his hands and touches everything.
Right.
So I put a lot of microphones on him to capture everything. And when we're mixing, we're digging every little thing that he's doing, because there's he touches his fingers. He plays with his fingers, not only his, you know, the
Yeah.
sticks. So every single thing. That's why what I learned with Richard is I listen.
So
listen.
Thank you. So, thank you, David. But in the mixing process,
yeah,
I don't just let it go all the way through. I start hearing little accents, and I'll push them or pull them back, or you know that like each one of the little, each one of the phrases can be, you know, I manipulate it. Okay. We do this in the computer, but this board actually has a knee cam. And it has those where you can do the flying faders with all the faders start moving around. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. But that's basically when you write one line. You listen to one part and you're writing it. Like if you know, I would hear like Ellie's doing this kind of with his fingers on the snare, and I just boost it up, just put it up.
Right.
You know, or bring it down. You know, or he's doing like a ride, or the bass is doing a ride. I would just, you know, accent it. If I hear the piano and there's a nice comp on it and there's this line on it, just put it up. Yeah. Just like just make it noticeable.
So you going old school, really riding the
fader.
Faders.
Yeah.
You know, and of course I've never been in the studio, but looking at the room, it looks like it's probably amazing the sound in that room.
It is. And David works
along with a Neve, because it just opens up the warmth of everything. But
and
I've kind of learned the engineering piece of trying to really get into that, because I'm fascinated with how records sound. I'm fascinated because you can have great music, but if the presentation of the music, engineering wise, it loses something. You know what I mean? That's just as important.
Yeah, and that's something that I kind of pride myself on. I know how to make a good record. I may not know how to play, but I do know how to make a good record. I'm just, you know, I mean, I know how to play the thing. I know how to play, but you know what I'm saying? I've done enough of them to know that this should be done a certain way. Yeah. And you know, it comes from experience. It's not nothing, you know, no intellect, just experience. I've been doing it a lot, and I know this works, and I know that doesn't work. And, you know, I actually have times where I accent and push, you know, my mistakes, which is like, you know, just put that out there, just put it out there, because if it's sonically sounding cool, it works. You know, it's like listening to Pharoah Sanders. I mean, you're not judging, but if he's playing some way out stuff, and it's right there, sitting there, not, you know, with enough compression and you know, that it's not screeching in your ears. It has a beauty to it. You know, it may be atonal, but it has a beauty because it's not knocking you over. Right. So these are the things that, you know, that I learned how to do over time.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, man, because I can hear the humanity in the engineering. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, you know, in the era we live in, everything sounds quote unquote perfect.
Yeah.
And it lacks soul. It lacks that thing, because most records that we love were made under some of the most not so good, you know, situations.
Yeah. Right. One of my favorite stories is that I had a chance to go to a couple of EWF rehearsals and stuff like that. And Michael Harris is the trumpet player. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Harris from the Phoenix Horns. He was playing with this cat, Jerry Hay from Sea Winds, and they were doing this hit. And Michael was playing lead. So he hit this thing and went, yeah, and it cracked. And the engineer who stepped on it said, hey man, no, you hit that, you messed this. No, he said, no, leave it alone. Don't you dare touch that, man. That is the human element. That's what I want. I want that human element. And that was September.
No kidding.
That was September. Yep. And it's there.
Wow.
It's popping in there. You know, it's one of those notes, man. It's like, you don't touch that. You know, you know, no, don't touch it. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's what we need to do sometimes.
I think I actually know the one you're talking about now that you're saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and he fought. He said, no, don't you dare touch that, man. No, that's the human element. That's, that's popping that, I don't know, what, high G or something, and then, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question, man. I appreciate it.
Richard.
Yes.
I have a question for you. David DeHart here. Hi.
Hey, David. Yeah.
It's pretty special when a father has a close relationship with a son.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even extraordinary when you have a relationship like you have with your son. Could you talk a little bit about that musically? And, if you're ever doing a record and something happens, do you revert to your father tone and pull back and say, no, I'm a musician here, we're working? Or how does all that come together when you're working together as father, son? And it's beautiful to see you guys together. There's no doubt about it.
I think that's a question for Ellie.
Yeah, well, take it, Ellie, if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. And I'll comment later.
Well, my pops always reverts back to this one story. Sorry, I'm in the middle of getting my computer charger. My computer's dying. But my pops always reverts back to this one story when we were doing a Daniel Ryman's.
That's where I was going. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I've heard this. We're doing Daniel Ryman is a good friend of my father. He was doing a rock record, and I wasn't really playing rock, that much. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confusing this record. This is when you were producing for Pasha, and you wanted
Slave Ships. Yeah.
Slave Ships go. Yeah, it was a song that you wrote for Pasha, my sister, who was a singer, and you had very specific things you were trying to do, and I don't remember how old I was. Do you remember?
About 14 or 13 or 14.
Yeah, I was like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like the first times he's starting to like produce me, like when I play, like because he's usually just like like do your thing. And he was like, all right, but now I'm hearing something really specific, and I wanted to play whatever it was I wanted to play.
Tony.
Yeah, sure, I'm sure. All over this, like super low key backbeat song. I just wanted to like play a bunch of stuff. And he told me, he's like, no, like, play this one groove, and I got an attitude, and it was like, like, nah, man, like you don't know, that like, that starting to fight your pops, but your pops knows a few things when it comes to this type of stuff. So it was like I had to, figure that out for myself. I think I figured that out pretty quick.
Let me elaborate on the story. Here was the thing, the funny part for me with the realization was that I had never produced him. I'd gone into the recording studio with him, and I go, "Hello, man, just play. Let's just do it. Yeah. Let's do it." So now I'm doing a pop record, and so I needed this certain groove, and he knew how to play the groove. But of course, Tony Williams was always there. It's like, so he wanted to put Tony Williams in everything, or Tony or Elvin or somebody. And I said, no, I just want the groove. And he went, "You don't like what I'm doing?" And I'm like, yes, "No, man, I love what you're doing." But and it hit me. I said, "Oh, I've never produced. We never had that relationship." So I felt awkward and I felt bad. But we work it. We work it through. We work through all those things. He's my favorite drummer at the moment.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's my favorite drummer and a wonderful human being who I still adore. So far.
It is.
That's great. I think we have time for one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. So do we have another question?
I got a comment here. Make a comment. Just want to congratulate Richard, and I want to say that Richard is this era's Renaissance man. Very fine producer. He produced 2 of our CDs, being Upsurge, All Hands on Deck, and Chromatology. And Richard is, in addition to being a great producer, a horner, Richard is also a wonderful vocalist. And I'd never knew if he began as a vocalist or if at some point that came into his life or he went in that direction. So could you answer that question, or I can get it later the next time we're in the studio together?
Well, it never came first. As a player, I would always like scat the parts, you know, and which gave me the confidence to be able to sing. I think Young Man is might have some of those skills too, because he was always scatting parts all day long. So, but what happened to me was I was out on the tour, and the vocalist got sick and couldn't do the song, and you know, there was some pressure, and it just happened to have a song. They happened to have a tune that I knew, so I decided to go ahead and sing it. But I prefer to sing in a recording studio or at home, and not necessarily live. But of late, I have been doing it and like improvising. I like to, you know, I like to do things on the spot and on the edge. I'm always on the edge. You know, it's like I'm harking back to our ancestors who always have to improvise. You know, I mean, you know, as soon as we hit the soil, we were improvising. So I'm kind of like that. You know, I just want to improvise. And, you know, sometimes it's, you know, for our ancestors, it was life and death. But fortunately, it's not life and death for me. So, but I'm still in the aspect of always improvising, trying to figure things out right there in the moment. You know, so, you know, I'll sing something. Not right now, but I'll sing something.
Hey, very clever guys there.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. And it's just great to have you on board with Oaktown Jazz Workshops as the emissary and instructor, and really the person that I go to for so much you know, direction with the organization. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. If I can just say that, Robbie, I appreciate what you do. You're holding Oaktown Jazz Workshops in great esteem. You're keeping it together. So thank you for doing that, and all the instructors, you know, doing their part. And it's a pleasure for me to be a part of Oaktown Jazz Workshop. It's a pleasure for me to see all these folks who came out and supported today. So thank you very much. And all those who have been supporting in other aspects, thank you very much. I really do appreciate
thanks
it.
To everyone
thank you, David.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And if you guys would, you know, go to the website and turn other people onto the website, so I know who you guys are, and maybe you might just have the CD. You might just receive it as a gift. But if you can turn other people onto the album, it would be great. I would really.
And the website, what's the URL for the website?
It's Richard Howell and Sudden Changes. RichardHowellAndSuddenChanges.com.
That's great. And if you'd like to know more about Oaktown Jazz Workshops, that's oaktownjazz.org.
And LaFauna.
And if you want to know a little bit more about Fauna Music, you just find me on Instagram, on Facebook, La Fauna Music, and you can see what I do there.
And I'll see you guys in the tribe tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Peace.